Hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I just wanted to give an update that I've got all the rules for Normandy, the beginning of the end, all here, all the rules. In fact, that's why I'm filming this now, is because the exclusive rules came in separately. When I emailed the company, I accidentally put the word of instead of or, because I said I didn't get the exclusive rules, or I put like I didn't get the exclusive rules of the rule book, and I meant to say I didn't get the exclusive rules or the rule book. It was a typo on my part, so that caused me getting the exclusive rules first, and then after contacting them, Draco Ideas was just so very kind in dealing with me and the fact that I made a mistake, and they went ahead and expedited out the main rules as well. So I just want to say, thank you for the great customer service. That's actually very appreciated, even though I made a mistake. Because exclusive rules came earlier, I opened them because I wanted to kind of look and see what was in here. Now the only thing, like, they came packaged really well. The only thing is there's a rip here, and I'm really not sure where this rip came from, because that was how they pulled out. So I'm not sure what happened there. But fortunately, it's just on the edge, and it doesn't affect anything as far as reading and understanding the rules. So I figured we'd look at this one first, because I had that open first. Now, the rule books themselves, I'm assuming the other one will be the same way. They're a nice kind of glossy magazine type of paper. They'll tear, but they will hold up, I believe, just to regular usage, reading. Should be fine. And let's see, how many pages is this? I know everybody likes to know. How many pages? The exclusive rules come out to 9 pages. Well, let me see here. 10 pages. Out to page 9, like page 8 is actually where the last set of rules are, and this is designing a point-based scenario. So this is really neat. I'm not sure how this will tie in with like the solo system. The solo system also has a scenario generation system, but I'm guessing if you didn't have that and you somehow got the exclusive rules, then there's like a whole bunch of equipment here, and then it's got point values and then some rules on creating scenarios. So you even have if you got like just the basic Kickstarter and you got the exclusive rules, then you still have a chance of making your own scenarios, even if you don't have the Alone in the Storm. So I mean, I think that's cool. They've included a lot of different ways to get like points and things to make your own scenarios. I just thought I would talk about that for a moment because I thought it was very cool. Now the exclusive rules in here, I think, are really more setting up the like Normandy type of landings, because it talks a lot about like the airborne dropping in. It's got rules for Rangers, the DD tanks, the amphibious tanks. I haven't read it in its entirety, but it also includes some of the rules. I thought it had in here bocage, section on bocage, because let me tell you, oh no, I guess not. For some reason I thought there was a spot in here that talked about the bocage, which I was like, ugh. But it does have like the cliff, so I think you could do when the Rangers did the climbed up Point de Hoc, you might be able to do something like that. So again, I'm just kind of speculating some of the stuff that we have in here, because I didn't quite read all these yet. Because, well, like here we go. Here's some rules for rhinos probably cutting through the hedge and the bocage, putting on the clearing tools on the front of your tanks. Now I will say though that I didn't read this yet in its entirety, simply because I was reading the rules on how to play online, and so I spent my time trying to come up with notes. In fact, because it's really hard to always get my tablet. I share that with my 4-year-old daughter, so I don't always have the rules with me. So what I was doing was I was actually going through and online taking the rules, reading the online rules that they had posted on Board Game Geek, and then just writing down like reminders and things so I could play the basic game. So I'm actually quite happy then that these came in, and they're always packaged really well. I mean, they come in a nice, you know, big padded envelope, and then they were stuck between the cardboard here. So I think that these will be in really good shape. So I'm going to just try to carefully open this. And, well, it looks like some of the tape stuck to the rule book, and then in shifting that caused the rules inside to slip away from the stapled binding. So what we have is a damaged in transit. Let me tell you, it's not due to the lack of them trying. Like I said, Draco Ideas did a fantastic job trying to get this out to me expedited, and you know, they put it between cardboard so it wouldn't get, I mean, they tried, but you know, I will deal because it's nice to actually have the rules here. Now I will talk about the rules I have read, and I'm just going to take this and kind of move it off to the side for a moment, otherwise that'll drive me bonkers. I'll have to clean this up. Alright, so I'm just going to share some of the things about the rules that I do know, that I did learn. So first is your introduction, it talks about game components, and then it talks about platoons. So that's the basic element of the game, is your platoon. So each counter is a platoon, 3 platoons, usually a support weapon. Like in scenario 1, it's 3 platoons, an officer, and a machine gun attachment, which makes up your company. And then you activate the leader of the company to then check if he can activate all the people in range. So I've seen that before, and I kind of like that. I like that kind of chain of command. And then as things happen to platoons, you then can make company morale checks or platoon morale checks depending on specific situations that you run into. So that's like the basic elements. These are platoons, and the officers are their own, probably company officers are their own little counter. And then they got the troops, which represent, you know, the infantry and all that fun stuff. Then it's got semi-automatic fire. That's one thing. That's something I made a note of. So what's nice is there are some specific things, like most games, that, you know, little details to keep track of, but most of those are easy to find in the rules. So I think the rules are written really well. It's just a matter of, you know, kind of learning. It's a new game, but now that I've got the actual printed rules, this will make it much easier for me. But there is a rule for semi-automatic fire. Your fire factor number, if it's red, such as with this American infantry, then they subtract 1 from their die roll on the attack table. And this is a game where you want to roll low for the best results. And it talks about officers and what they can do, the stacking limits. Full strength platoon counts as 3 steps. And then as they take casualties and shrink away, you know, there'll be 2 steps or 1 step. So you can stack up to 9 steps in a hex, and then like unlimited officers. Your machine gun platoons, those count as 3 steps. So when you play the game, part of it is deciding how many units you want to stack in a hex. And right now, just off of some solo playing, I can't see a big disadvantage yet to putting a lot of platoons in a hex, so I try to keep my company together as much as possible. Situation barring, you might want to split them out, but so far it seems good to keep them together. And I could be wrong. Maybe tactically, after I play some face-to-face, I might, you know, change my mind on how to, you know, organize the troops. But since damage, like a lot of games, it's split evenly among the platoons in your hex. So it seems good to stack them, and then they can combine firepower to make like one devastating, you know, the kill stack. Then the sequence of play, there's a command phase where you check to see if units are out of range, because each leader has a range of influence. You roll for initiative. Initiative is easy. It's roll 2 dice 6. The attacker gets a +1 bonus, and then there could be some scenario-specific rules that might modify that. Then after command phase, after you've done the command phase initiative, then it goes into alternating activations of your companies. Alright, so I still kind of like that. So, you know, I activate a company, then the opponent activates one. So it's a nice back and forth kind of a system. And then finally, after all the actions have taken place, you remove the markers. So in this game can be very counter heavy, because I was playing and I ended up with a platoon that got shot, well, a company that got shot at. So I had 3 platoons in one stack, and all of them took 1 step loss. So I had the 3 platoons, the officer, and then each one of those had to have a -1 on top of it, of the platoon, indicating it had 1 step loss. And then finally on top of the stack I put a finished because they were done. So you end up with these little, these little towers of Pisa. So that's probably the only thing that's a little bit, I don't know, the bane of a lot of war games is the tall counter stacks, but not horrible. Trust me, I've played games where we have a lot of stuff stacked up. So anyway, that'd be the last thing. Remove all those finished markers. You plop those on top of things when they're done. Kind of like, some games we mark them with a fired or moved. I almost wish these had fired or moved, because there are situations where if you have fired or moved, that might make a difference in, combat rolls and things like that. But finished, you just got to remember who was moving or who was shooting. Then it's got a nice section on the terrain. This I thought was really nice. I think they did a very good job explaining the different types of terrain. The only one that I just can't really find is like the bocage, railroad, light woods, fields, woods, dispersed. The only thing that I could find was on Board Game Geek. I mentioned bocage. On the terrain chart, which I got over here, I'll show you what it says about bocage. Really, about the only thing it mentions here is that it costs 1 point of movement for infantry, 1 movement point to cross, and that's on top of the cost of the terrain they're entering. So if they're crossing a bocage to move into clear terrain, it costs 2 movement points. And that's pretty much it. Wheeled vehicles can't cross through it. Tracked vehicles can't cross through it. Okay, cool. And then AP fire results, the defensive value, it's based on the terrain that is here, that is of the hex that you're firing into. It does block line of sight. C is yes. And then terrain height is 1. Now there is a rule on the combat chart where if you shoot through terrain that has like a height of 1 or 2, then you get to add +1. The shot passes through 1 or 2 level or half hex. Adds +1 to your combat roll. So that's like degrading terrain. So that's all I can really find about bocage. And that +1 terrain was confirmed on Board Game Geek. I think it was Nicholas, I don't know how to say his name, Escubi. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. But he said that, yeah, that +1 penalty applies shooting both ways. So it doesn't matter. The bocage is just such a thick thing that it doesn't matter if you're adjacent to it or not. It adds a +1 to shooting both ways. So I was like, cool. But that's all I could really find on bocage. Why does that bother me? Well, it doesn't bother me because now that I know, it's just that the first scenario, the map B, has a lot of bocage. I've got stuff set up. I can't show it to you right now, but for a map that heavily has a lot of bocage, I was hoping for like a little rules blurb. Otherwise, everything else in here, I think they did a good job. I also like, they do have a spotting system. I like that. Although, I don't have this chart replicated anywhere. So I'm actually thinking of taking the digital copy and just, cutting that section out and printing it for myself, just so I can have that as a little reminder so I don't have to keep opening up the rules. What I really love is these charts explaining line of sight and who can see what. I just think these are great visual. I'm a visual person, so this reading the explanation and then seeing this fabulous pictorial representation of the different heights was great. Now we know that in real life a lot of these aren't always cliffs, there's gradual, but how things are sometimes represented in games, they look like straight drop-offs. But I think it does a fantastic job of explaining the line of sight and the differences of elevation. So kudos, whoever came up with that, brilliant, good job. Then it goes into movement. And this is just like any other game, really. The movement is each hex costs a certain amount, and then different types of transportation has different types of movement values, and they're color-coded based on the type of movement that you're doing. So wheeled vehicles are yellow, tracked vehicles are black, and leg units are white. Easy. And there is one thing here called double time. Double time lets you add 3 movement points, and it's for leg units, so they run. The only real restriction I see is that they can't do it 2 turns in a row. So there's not like any. I might have to look, as I think there was, if you're shooting at a double time unit, you got a penalty for shooting at them. Yeah, double time target. Oh, if it's a double time target, they're running, you actually get a bonus for shooting at them. It's a -2 to your dice roll, so that you got to keep in mind. Moving targets are -1. So that's why I was saying it'd be nice if you had fired versus move instead of just finished. Because if you play like a large game, I haven't played a large game yet, and I haven't had too much trouble remembering who's done what. But if you have a large game and let's say you have to stop and come back, that might be one of those things like, was that a moving unit or were they just firing? Might not be an issue, but I'll find out more as I play more. Anyway, so you got double time, moving via roads, so just the common type of movement you would see in most games. Attack is pretty easy as well, because you're going to add up the fire factors of participating units. That gives you an overall number that you compare on this fire chart. And, what's nice is these are spaced in 2s, and so it's very rare, because I won't mention some games I've seen, but some games I've played have very large gaps between the different levels of adding your fire factors together. So there's really not much difference between like a 23 fire factor and a 27 fire factor. What that to me leads people is to artificially creating fire groups and fire teams that probably realistically wouldn't happen, because you would probably want to fire almost everything you have, but only having up to 2, like some of this 8, 9, 10, there's no gap there, but a lot of these there's 1 gap. Like there's not much difference between a 13 and a 12, and that's fine. That's probably not going to prevent me from stacking 2 platoons together or 3 platoons, adding their firepower together to get, say, like an 18, because there's an 18. Or if that added up to 19, I would probably still want to do it because I'd lose 1 fire factor number, and that's fine. I just don't like it when feels like mathing the system for optimization, when to me that doesn't seem like what would happen realistically. I think realistically people are going to fire. It's like, we got a machine gun, we got these guys, have them shoot, let them fire. Versus, well, I don't think the odds will work out if I just have my platoon and machine gun fire. Maybe I'll just have the 2 platoons fire, and I'll save the machine gun just because the odds don't stack up. So this odds chart here works just fine for me. But then you just roll, and again, the lower number you roll, the more hits you score. So if you had 10 fire factor and you rolled a 4, there'd be 4, well, it says here 6 potential hits, and then those 6 hits you divide it by the type of cover that the people are in. So for example, if we had 6 hits and they're in a built-up area, there's a defensive divisor. So you take your 6 divided by 5, and that would give you how many hits, and you round down. So it's quite possible that you might only do 1 hit or 2, depending on the terrain that they're in. So it's kind of neat. There's no dice rolling for saves or anything like that, which I know some people don't like. I don't mind. I've played lots of games where you make save rolls, but what they've done here is they just divide the hits by the terrain that you're in, and that determines overall how many hits you get. Anyway, so that's part of attack. Nothing too complicated. Maximum attack range, you can go out to double, but then you lose some fire factor. Now when you apply hits, you apply hits equally among the platoons that are in that hex. So, then it says like veterans get the hits last, so you would apply hits to the non-veteran units first. But then once everything's had like 1 hit, and then you randomly determine any leftover hits unless there's enough to go around for everyone. So you just keep assigning hits until everybody has an equal amount of hits, and then you either apply a -1 counter or flip it if it's at 2. Some units on the backside might show like a vehicle because they're being towed. So at that point, then there's a -2 marker you could put on it. Also, if you have some damage, depending on how many hits you have, it might determine your fire factor will get reduced. So one hit will just reduce your fire factor just a little bit, and then that second hit, when you flip the counter, it'll have a new fire factor that you go off of. So a lot of units, a lot of infantry units, they'll just lose 1 off of their fire factor number when they take that first hit. And then it has rules for officers if they get hit, and determining if they get killed in the attack, how to replace it. Then it has reaction rules, where you can put stuff on reactions so they can be ready to shoot at people who come in their way. It's even got rules in there for if you don't put a reaction marker on them. Lots of examples. Again, I think it's a really well written game, with lots of examples. And so far I've been kind of playing solo, and my biggest thing is just remembering some of the little rules. But morale, several pages on morale, so that's a big deal. There's company morale, platoon morale, then that leads into possible route checks, disintegration, things like that. Rally phase, and then the rest of the book is things that I haven't read because, again, I'm just playing scenario 1. But you've got your artillery rules. You've got quite a bit of artillery rules, looks like. Movement, transporting troops, assault rules, nice charts, close assault, hand-to-hand combat, and then it kind of wraps up with cavalry charges. Cool. Nice pictures throughout. Section 4, AFV. I guess then that's the last, would be getting into the armored vehicles, close assault support. So a lot of things that you would expect from your game, are there. Great. Again, good examples. And that's the rules. Yep. So that's the rules in a nutshell, and just a little bit of my understanding of the game, which is enough, like I said, to play scenario 1. So there you go. They're in, and that is Warstorm Series version 2 rules from Draco Ideas. And again, thanks everyone at Draco for getting the rules out to me. With this now in place, it'll be much easier for me to do a playthrough, and then as I play through, we can discuss all the mistakes I've made, but it'll be easier for me to learn and follow up with my corrections now that I've got this. So thanks a lot, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.